Who is St. Francis of Assisi? Francis of Assisi is a 13th century saint, in early 13th centuries, 1200s. He lived a lavish lifestyle and had a longing for a warrior's honor. And in his youth was actually engaging in, military affairs. He was captured, imprisoned, and his father, who was an Italian merchant, he's very well off, had to kind of bail him out. And he did. And after that event, he changed. He sought a simple life in poverty. Some people, when they try to help the poor, they give from what they have, but the way that he wanted to serve the poor was by being poor with them and serving them in what way that he could from that standpoint. To the point where he actually followed the gospel literally and gave away everything that he had and followed Christ. There's an interesting story behind that. His father had had enough of this different lifestyle he had lived. He decided that he would place him under house arrest because he was being foolish, or it seemed to his father like he was being foolish. So, placed him under house arrest. His mother was caring for him and ultimately got him freed. And he went right back to what he was doing that got him put under house arrest. He's giving everything away. Upon confrontation with his father, he gave his last thing away. He gave his very clothes away and walked away from his father naked, saying, "From now on, my Father will be the Father who is in heaven." And how often might we as parents get in the way of the vocation of our children? Something to keep in mind. There was a time where St. Francis believed that God had told him to rebuild his church, and there was a little dilapidated, uninhabited church that was falling apart. He thought that God was telling him to rebuild it, and so he took that very literally. But he came to realize that God was not calling him necessarily to rebuild that church, but to rebuild the church, to be a source of reformation. And the Franciscans are a religious order. They are people of the evangelical counsels of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They live it in an extreme way, in a literal to the gospel way. And rather than being cloistered, they are actually out in the world. They are poor with the poor. There's a quote attributed to him that says, if, preach and when necessary use words. He did not say that, but he did say that to preach with your deeds. He fasted, where he went up into a mountain for Lent, and he brought with him his food that he would eat for the entire Lent, and it was a large loaf of bread. And he went into the mountains, came back with half of it, so he was given a gift for fasting. That's obviously not something that a human being could survive on. So that's a miraculous moment in the life of St. Francis, and he knew souls. He knew that one of his brothers was going to leave the order, and so he stopped talking to him. That this guy kind of confronted him. Why aren't you talking to him? Why are you avoiding me? He said, "You will not be faithful. You will leave the order." And this ultimately happened, but the compunction that came from his statement was of such a nature that he did die a good and faithful son of the church. And so sometimes these mysterious things happen to us that are maybe seemingly wicked, where somebody's avoiding us or something like that, and they tell us something we don't want to hear, but maybe that is a way to give us a compunction of heart, so that maybe even if it's at the very end, that we will have that conversion that we need to be in the bosom of Holy Mother of the Church. He was a man of evangelization, and he did not give some kind of a distinction between evangelization and proselytism. He truly believed that people needed to be converted to the Catholic faith, and he made no bones about it. He went right up into Muslim territory and walked right up to a sultan and told him that for the safety of his own soul, that for his immortal soul, he needs to convert to the Catholic faith or to burn in hell. And in that way, he was seeking martyrdom, but he knew what he was getting into, and he knew how he was going to go about it. But the Sultan, obviously, he's not a martyr. The Sultan did not martyr him. In fact, he just gained respect for him. And I think that even today, that the clear truth, when really proclaimed and really meant, really believed by the one who proclaims it, is going to gain the respect of the world the way that St. Francis gained that respect of this worldly person. He had the stigmata, another miraculous example. There are a number of stigmatas that have happened in history. His was actually witnessed by a fellow brother who was in hiding, who was watching it, and it was applied by an angel of God, and I guess we could maybe liken it to lasers reaching the 5 wounds, the hands, the feet, and the side. And I believe this is probably what ultimately led to the end of his life. He only lived to be, I think, 43 years old. He was a beggar. He begged for food. Whatever was offered, that's what he ate. And he was always very thankful for what God had willed for him to eat in that day. But in his religious order, fasting was so often you really didn't need to eat all that much anyway. Let's see. At the day of this recording, it is November 6th. So he would have been fasting for 5 days at this point, because a part of his religious order is, after All Saints' Day, to fast literally until Christmas. And then you take a break from the fast for 8 days, and then after Epiphany, you do another fast literally until Easter. This was a no-joke man who loved the faith and was willing to make reparation, not only for his own sins, but for the sins of the world. And that's the kind of doubling down that we need in today's times. I hope that's helpful, and if it is, hey, I don't know, share it. And as always, stay hungry, my friend.